Information fueled,
opinion driven. This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
8:06, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Want to get right to Robby Starbuck, one of my favorite guys to interview ever. Robby, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Johnny and I both have old-timers disease. We're trying to figure out, Robby, when was it the Republicans did you dirty and kept you off the ballot? What year was that? Was that 2020 or 2022?
That was 2020.
2020, thank you. I told you I was right, Johnny.
I was right, Dan.
Shut up, Johnny. You're fired. Anyway, so I got to ask you, Robby, a couple of things. Number one, you have done, you know that I was a supporter day one, and I thought that the Republicans did you dirty. That's all, water under the bridge. But what you have done since then has been incredible. I don't know if anyone else has now called you the DEI slayer, but that really is what you are. You've been making incredible headlines over the past several months because you're going after companies, as has been well documented in the Wall Street Journal and other places. You're going after the likes of Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley Davidson now, and you're going after them for their DEI policies. Now, as everyone knows, those have begun falling by the wayside. But I've just got to ask you a couple of questions. Number one, how did you decide that this was going to be one of your missions?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. For a long time, I've looked at sort of like, if we look at politics in America the same way you look at any battle, you've got to look at identifying your weaknesses, identify the strengths of the enemy you face. And so when I look at the left, honestly, I think their strengths in America right now is like they've got people who will show up at a Starbucks, glue themselves to the countertop over what type of milk they have, okay? And yes. On our side, traditionally, like we struggle to organize anything because people are busy, they're working, they've got, that's the excuse always. Like, okay, well, we have a normal life and we're running businesses and we're working hard and so on and so forth. And like, there's truth to that. However, if we can't even send an email or make a phone call, then we shouldn't be surprised when the left takes over everything that we love. They're taking over the schools, they're taking over corporate America, everything. And so that's how you get a communist CEO at Harley Davidson who says that he wants to take on and redefine capitalism and then forces through training specifically for white men at the company to go get diversity training for white people. And tells them, oh, you guys got to read this book, White Fragility, that essentially says that, whiteness is evil and that it's destroying America and that's the bedrock of America is white supremacy. So that only happens if we do nothing. And so I realized, you know what, we've got to do something. All of the boycotts I've seen in the past sucked. They were not focused. It's a one-day news cycle. We're going to tell this story over a long period of time where it is very difficult for a company to run the PR strategy of, we'll just wait for this to blow over. And so that was sort of the premise is, okay, let's do this and let's make it uncomfortable. Let's get every little piece of information about how the company has changed, the culture has changed, and how diametrically out of step they are with the values of their customers. And it's worked out. At Tractor Supply, they entirely changed all of their policies. They dropped all DEI, and they adopted a very unifying stance. I think they're kind of the model, honestly, for other companies is like, go do what they did, focus on the core business, take responsibility, admit you're wrong, and people are going to be very forgiving, and I think people have been very forgiving of Tractor Supply. I know I have been, because this is like, it's not a movement about destruction. It's about changing things and restoring them back to what they have been in the past, which was in alignment with their customers. So we want these great American brands, but we want them to reflect the values of their customers and stay neutral on, really divisive issues.
And Robby, one of the things that I would say is that is what separates you from the left. The left wants to destroy. You just want to unite, is what I'm hearing from you. Were you surprised? Let's focus on Tractor Supply for a second. So, because they were, I believe, your first, I don't want to say victim, but they were your first project. So how did you find out how DEI oriented they were? Give me one or two of the worst examples. And I mean, they folded, I think, reasonably quickly, didn't they?
It was about 2.5 weeks for them. And I would say a couple of the worst things, I mean, this kind of just blew my mind as a Tractor Supply customer because I go weekly. I've got cattle, I've got chickens rather, and me and my kids go weekly to Tractor Supply, and it's one of those places you get lost. You end up buying stuff you totally didn't need because they've just got really cool stuff. And to find out that without knowing it, I was helping contribute to pride parades here where I live blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind that they would take money that customers spent there and then turn around and sponsor pride events that include, really exposing children to very sexual topics. I think that's absolutely wrong, and I would never support something like that. So that was one of the big things that got me going, and I was like, okay, I've got to dig deeper, pull these threads. What exactly is going on with this company? Because that is not the company that I walk into on a weekly basis. So something is wrong at corporate because it is out of step with even their stores, where you would never, ever get the idea they would do something like this. And then the fact that they were doing these woke trainings, and the policies about letting men into women's bathrooms, stuff like that. So all of that coupled together, we really started to get a lot of information, and I wasn't surprised that they made the big change at all, because I knew what I had, and I think they knew what I had too, because there was a last piece of content before they changed everything where in the background I showed a screenshot of a video that only they would know what it is. And I kind of guessed when I showed that they were going to flip at that moment, because it was an unreleased video of the CEO. It would have been impossible at that point for them. And I think they would have preferred to make the change without that video out there.
So let me ask you, Robby, because you spoke about how you want to really unify and the workplace should be neutral. So you went to battle with Tractor Supply, and I'm assuming that you heard from some of the people that worked at Tractor Supply. I know that you heard from customers of Tractor Supply on both sides of the issue. And so when they decided to fold, do you part as friends, or the people that you were contacting at Tractor Supply and engaging with as this battle went on, how does that relationship moving forward? Like, is there a relationship?
Oh yeah, no, it's funny. So many employees reached out to us, I couldn't even tell you the number. And what's funny is not one of them was negative. Not one outreach was negative from any employees at John Deere, at Tractor Supply, or at Harley. Not one. Okay. There's been one Harley dealership that's been negative, and that's it. And that's their super woke Vermont Bernie Sanders lives. So I'm not surprised by that. But everybody else has been overwhelmingly happy. And in the case of say Tractor Supply employees, I still get messages on a regular basis that are like, I just have to say thank you. Thank you so much for what you did, because it has totally changed our workplace. Even at corporate, I've had some folks reach out and say you would not believe it. It was like somebody went in overnight. They got rid of all the woke signage, all of the stuff that we had issues with. It was all gone. Okay. Everything. It was like a dream. And so they're overjoyed with the change. And I think that, that's the funny thing is this isn't even a particular, everybody knows I'm conservative. This isn't a particularly right-wing thing. This is about just having a workplace that everybody's able to just do their damn job. It's it shouldn't be difficult to say, hey, you know what, the premise of work is work. Let's not get into, how the boss feels about sex changes. That's weird. That is a very weird thing to inject into the workplace. But you've got all these woke CEOs doing that. And so Harley's one of those cases where the CEO is a true believer, and he's actually helping force this stuff into other companies. He formed a group called the B Team with Richard Branson, and the B Team's explicit purpose is to force wokeness into corporate, I was going to say corporate America, but honestly, it's globally all corporations. And so they're sort of an extension of the globalist, WEF mindset, but with an activist, sort of plan to get rid of leaders who have just been focused on making businesses successful and replacing them with activist leaders. That is their explicit purpose. And so the more people understand that there is a plan to destroy these companies, there is a plan to force leftism into everything that you touch, you start to realize that we have to stand up and do something. We don't have a choice. This isn't a moneymaker for me. I'm blessed to have done well in life. So I'm okay dedicating my time to this right now to help slay the beast, because if we don't, our kids are going to know nothing except for a world where this is a must. You have to bow down to the woke beast, and I'm not okay with that.
Well, that's why I opened up the segment, Robby Starbuck, calling you a DEI slayer. The dark side of all of this is that you have also been attacked on social media by some folks out there on both the right and the left. What has that experience been like? I mean, you've been it's interesting, Robby. You've been a target of both sides. You know, again, Republicans and the left, and predictably the left always. But you know, even some from some folks on the right. What has that been like as far as you being a target? You, of course, you know, have a family and everything. Does it ever, you know, really worry you?
Well, I only seem to get attacked by incredibly weak people, you know, so it doesn't really worry me in that respect. They're usually people who are cowardly, you know, who have never really stood up for anything in their life. And the reality is, like, running in my DNA is the knowledge that communism stole everything from my family. And so when that's your operating premise, you don't really worry about, oh, what is this person saying about you? Like, God gives us all gifts, is my belief. And the gift God gave me was to not care. I don't care what any of these detractors think, but to be honest with you, it extends way offline. You know, like I've actually, I just had Williamson County Sheriff at my house, in the last week because somebody doxed my kids. You know, they put all my kids' name, address, all that stuff. And, you know, in that same 24-hour period, somebody showed up and they broke the back window of my neighbor's truck and shot his call box. So, you know, like, this stuff extends into real life, and that part, you know, I'm prepared for. We have great security, you know, all that. I'm always carrying, so on and so forth. But, like, when you're given a great platform, and God's blessed me with a big platform of, you know, well over 1 million people who follow me online, and it's like, you need to use that as a force for good, as a force multiplier. If you don't, then I kind of think, you know, you're kind of cowardly. And so that's what I teach my kids is be bold, stand up for what you believe in. And if I don't do that, how are my kids ever going to do it? You know, and so that's kind of how I see it, is you can't worry about all the people who, you know, have problems with you or whatever, because if you're making evil angry, then you're doing a good job. If you're not making them angry, then, like, okay, try harder.
Yes. And, boy, I'm sorry to hear that you're going through that. I got to tell you, standing up for the good and standing up for what's right, it does make you a target. And you are absolutely right. I found it fascinating with this journey of yours because Elon Musk has now replied to your posts. Is it 45 times I saw the Wall Street Journal? I mean, I don't know if that's a gauge of your success or your notoriety, but I do believe that says something. And the more exposure you get, the more good you can do.
I mean, it certainly helps. Elon's been fantastic to me. He's a great guy. I believe, like I said, force multiplier, that is just like, for him, it's exponential. The force multiplication that he creates right now is incredible. And I think I've been a very positive influence on the direction of sort of the way that he's thinking and everything. So, you know, I just try to do the right thing. And I think if you do the right thing and you don't think about the consequences of doing the right thing, you know, you're going to like the outcomes in the long run. You know, even if there's some negative feedback or kickback in the short term, if you think about everything from an eagle eye view long term, and you're just thinking like, okay, what is the force for good long term, you're going to be very pleased in the long run by just doing the right thing. And it's kind of simple in that regard. But I do think, you know, I can't thank people like him enough who have sort of like helped multiply that army of people behind us that are wanting to do good. And, you know, here's the other thing about this, Dan, is like, how often do we get wins? You know, as somebody who's been a conservative, you know, Republican voter my whole life, I honestly feel like most of my adult life has been spent watching our party conserve nothing, win very little. Trump is the anomaly. Okay, he's won some stuff. He's won some battles. Outside of Trump, I go, what are we winning? You know, maybe DeSantis in Florida, he's done some great things. But we're talking about anomalies when we're talking about winning. And so that's the other thing that's very positive about the movement we're doing, is that we're showing people how to win again. That it doesn't take some major global apparatus. It takes us individually doing something, using our voices, spreading the word about something to bring down multi-billion-dollar companies and force them to assent to our position. And there's something in that. There's a power in that, of just putting the power back in people's hands and saying, you know what, us together, we outnumber them millions and millions, honestly, hundreds of millions to one when it comes to like the global elite people who are pushing this ideology and the people who are just normal people who are sick of it. And so, let's use that. We have the numbers. We just need to use them.
Great words and an attitude there, Robby Starbuck. How can folks follow you on Twitter? Not that you need any more Twitter followers, but you can never have enough.
Yeah, at Robby Starbuck on there, ROBBYSTARBUCK, and I'll see you there. Keep fighting. You guys are doing an incredible job. By the way, my cows are listeners to the show. I know that sounds funny, but I've got a radio in there, and they really like talk radio instead of regular music. And you can tell when they're happy because they do these little happy dances and stuff. They love listening to talk radio. It's the weirdest thing.
You know what? I like that. And, if you turn on like some liberal talk, they're probably going to start cow farting. So,
probably just to get them back for the Green New Deal.
That's sharecropping, Dan.
All right, moving. Thank you, Robby. We'll talk again soon.
That's very interesting. He said that about his cattle. My wife says the same thing about the wildlife around our house.
Really?
They react to our voices.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
I guess because we're three animals. I don't know.
Listen. I'll take whatever listeners I can get, and
or three beasts, I should say,
or beasts or whatever, man. Anyway,
can we hang some meters around their necks?
Boy, you know what? I'd sure like to.
We should.
I'd sure like to, Ken. For folks that don't know, that's how we measure the ratings. Anyway, 8:23 on Super Talk. I love what Robby has to say.
I do too.
The reason I admire him so much is because and again, I believe that the Republican Party did him dirty. Some people hate when I say that within my circle. But I believe that they did.
They did.
And so, and if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google Robby Starbuck in 2020 running for Congress. But he took that, and some people can get really pissed off and really angry and really bitter. He took what happened, and he just decided that, you know what? I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to learn from this experience, and I'm going to do something else. And I got to tell you, I think that right now, Robby Starbuck is being more influential for the conservative cause by not being in Congress and by doing what he's doing. And I think that, he's just doing a fantastic job. So.